I've heard quite a few stories about how some anonymous person tells a man that his wife is cheating on him, and the man usually believes it. The same situation happened to me, but I needed real evidence, so I wanted to personally make sure of everything and not jump to conclusions. I was shocked. It had to be a hoax, a poorly conceived, mean-spirited prank, but who would do such a thing? Who would risk destroying a good marriage just for a laugh? Those were the thoughts that filled my mind after that first phone call. It all started 6 months ago while I was sitting in my office at Apex Office Integrators, waiting for my 2 o'clock conference call on a Wednesday afternoon. As a project executive at Apex, I oversee 3 or more network integration projects at any given time. This means I spend a lot of time on conference calls to get updates on my projects, handle issues, and solve problems. It was only 1:30 p.m., so I was browsing the internet, looking at a digital camera I wanted to buy when my phone rang. Without taking my eyes off the computer screen, I reached over and answered it. "Hello, Apex Office Integrators, Mike Fulton speaking." "Are you Mike Fulton?" asked the female caller. "Yes, how can I help you?" "I don't think you can help me, but I hope I can help you," she said. "Help me? How? Is your wife's name Brenda?" "Yes." "Does she have a good friend named Kara?" she asked. "Yes," I said suspiciously. "What is this about?" "I just wanted to warn you that if you don't act soon, your wife is going to have an affair." "What? Who is this? Is this some kind of joke?" "Because it isn't funny," I said. Her statement was so unexpected that I didn't know how to react. Should I laugh at her or get angry? Or maybe I should just hang up. "I can't tell you who I am. I just wanted to give you a chance to prevent this before it happens." I knew my wife, and I knew she would never cheat on me, so this call had to be some kind of a joke. But who would play such a cruel prank? If I believed what this woman was saying, I would be deeply hurt and angry. Why would anyone want to put me through that? I wondered if the caller knew it was a joke or if she was just following someone else's instructions. As much as I wanted to slam the phone down, I decided to wait and play along for a while to try and figure out who was behind this hoax. "Why do you think my wife is going to have an affair?" I asked as calmly as possible. "I heard them talking about it." "You heard who talking about what?" I asked. "Your wife and her friends Kara and Francis, I think. They go to a place called Vinny's for lunch every Wednesday and sit at the same table, right inside the door in front of the windows. I also go there for lunch on Wednesdays, and I've been sitting at the table next to them. Eating by myself is boring, so I tend to listen in on other people's conversations for entertainment," she said. Kara was Brenda's best friend, and they had been friends since college. We all attended the same college, and I met both of them at the same party. Kara had been dating her husband John for over a year when I started dating Brenda. We've been close friends ever since. Francis was a name I didn't recognize. I didn't recall Brenda ever mentioning anyone named Francis. "And you heard my wife planning to have an affair?" I asked. "Not exactly. Let me explain. Your wife's friend, Kara, has been telling your wife about the affairs she's had over the last few years and how exciting they are. She's also been trying to convince Brenda to have an affair. Kara told your wife that this novel would not only be exciting, but would also make intimacy with you more interesting. So far, your wife has been hesitant, but over the past few weeks, I've noticed that her objections to Kara's suggestions have become less forceful. She's even started asking questions and generally showing more interest in the topic than she did initially. I just think you need to do something to stop this before it goes too far," she said. "Why do you care? I mean, why are you telling me this?" I asked. "I just don't want to see someone ruin their marriage because they took bad advice from a friend," the caller said. "You say that Brenda is showing more interest lately? How long have you been listening to their conversations?" I was starting to notice inconsistencies in her story, but I wasn't ready to dismiss her just yet. I needed to figure out who was manipulating me like this. "It's been 6 or 7 weeks now." "What are you going to do about it?" she asked. There it was, the bait, I wasn't ready to cut her off, but I wasn't going to take the bait either. I'm not sure. I need to gather more information before making any decisions. Can I reach out to you if I need to? I asked. No. I'll call you if I think we need to talk again. I knew she would never give me her number, but I had to try. My options were either to ignore the whole situation or to pretend I believed her in hopes of uncovering who was behind this and why they were messing with me. Okay, you'll call me, I said. Please do. I put the phone down and sat for a moment trying to make sense of the call. I knew what the caller had said was nonsense. Brenda would never cheat on me. In the 13 years we've been together, 2 years of dating and 11 years of marriage, Brenda has always been a loyal and devoted wife. She has never given me any reason to doubt her love for me, and she always finds new ways to show how much she cares. For my part, I can honestly say I've been just as loyal and devoted to her. There are 2 more reasons why I couldn't believe Brenda would cheat on me. Our children, Kevin and Michelle. Kevin is 6 years old and Michelle is 8. I know Brenda would never do anything to hurt our kids, so I knew this whole thing had to be a lie. I had to push the call out of my mind and focus on the 2 o'clock conference call. The issues that arose during the meeting kept me occupied for the rest of the afternoon, which helped me forget about the strange call while I was at work. However, it came back to the forefront of my thoughts as I drove home that evening. When I left the office, I intended to tell Brenda about the call, but on the way home, I decided it wasn't the best idea. I didn't want to worry her unnecessarily. I planned to tell her everything once I figured out who was behind the prank or whatever it was. That evening, I kept debating whether I should tell Brenda about the call. In the end, it didn't matter what I decided, as the opportunity never came up. Kevin and Michelle kept me busy helping them with their homework, and when they finally went to bed, I received a call from one of my project managers in California. While I was on the phone, Brenda came into my office, kissed me on the cheek, and whispered that she was tired and going to bed. By the time I got off the phone, Brenda was already asleep. Thursday was a hectic day for me, and I managed to push all thoughts of the phone call from the previous days out of my mind. Early on, I wondered if I would receive another call, but by lunchtime, I had forgotten about it, and no call came that afternoon. On Friday, I half expected a call, but when it didn't happen, I dismissed the thought and the related annoyance. Once I managed to stop thinking about it, it faded into the background, and I didn't recall it again until the following Wednesday. Wednesday morning went smoothly, and it seemed like the afternoon would be quiet as well. That afternoon, Jake Peterson was in my office. Jake is the project executive responsible for the Northeast region. We were discussing some common issues we were encountering in our projects and trying to find a common solution when my phone rang. Mike Fulton here, I answered. Hi, Mike, it's me again, said the now familiar voice. Can you hold on a minute, please? I said. I have someone in my office. Sure. Jake, I need to take this call, do you mind? I asked. No problem, Jake said as he stood up and headed for the door. Just before he stepped out, he turned and said, Is that your girlfriend? Then laughed as he closed the door behind him. I'm back, I said. You didn't do anything, did you? The voice asked. What? You didn't do anything to stop your wife, did you? The question caught me off guard, and it took me a moment to respond. I haven't quite decided how to handle this, I said. Is there something else I should know? Did you forget that today was Wednesday? I said. No. But the significance of it being Wednesday didn't immediately register with me. Right. You remember that today is Wednesday, but you forgot that your wife was having lunch with her friends again today, the voice said. My stomach muscles tightened involuntarily when she said that. Trying to stay calm, I asked, So, did you eavesdrop on their conversation today? Yes, and I'm telling you, you'd better decide what you're going to do soon or it might be too late, she said. Why do you say that? Today it wasn't Kara who brought up the idea of having an affair, it was your wife. That couldn't be true. I knew she would never do that. I felt a surge of anger. How was I going to get to the bottom of this if I couldn't find out who my caller was? What did Brenda say? Your wife asked Kara if she had been out on one of her secret dates in the past week. That doesn't mean Brenda is looking to have an affair, I said. No, it doesn't. But when Kara said she had been out last night, your wife told her she wanted to hear all the sordid details, she replied. I didn't know how to respond to that. I was trying to act like the suspicious husband when all I really wanted was to find out who I was talking to. I tried to think of what I would say if I believed what this woman was telling me. I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time believing what you're telling me, I said. I know this is difficult for you. But you have to believe me, or you might have a big mess to deal with later on. Can we meet to talk about this? I asked hopefully. No, I'll call you, she said. You'd better fix this soon. She hung up on me before I could say anything else. I was too angry to get much work done after the call, so I went home early. Wednesdays are Brenda's busy evenings. By busy, I don't mean staying up late. On Wednesdays, Brenda picks up Michelle and Kevin from school. She drops Kevin off at her mother's house and takes Michelle to her brownie meeting. Brenda is an assistant leader for the troop, so she stays for the meetings. After the meeting, she picks Kevin up, and the three of them get home around 6 o'clock. That particular Wednesday, I got home at 3:30 p.m. and went into my study. I grabbed a pad of paper and began to analyze the problem. As a project executive, I'm responsible for keeping my projects on track. Whenever a problem arises, my first step is to get a pad and pencil and break the problem down, analyzing it until I find the cause and solution. It's the only method I know for handling issues, so that's how I decided to tackle this new problem. I started by summarizing what the caller had told me. Kara is bragging about having affairs. She is trying to persuade Brenda to have an affair. Brenda hasn't agreed but has shown some interest. These conversations have occurred over 6 or 7 weeks. Next, I made a list of reasons why I thought the story was bogus. 1. Brenda would never cheat on me. 2. I have known Kara as long as I have known Brenda, and I don't believe she would cheat on her husband, John. 3. I knew that Brenda and Kara used to meet for lunch once a week, but Brenda hadn't mentioned their lunches in so long that it seemed unlikely they were still meeting weekly. 4. The caller mentioned a third person named Francis, but Brenda had never mentioned anyone by that name. 5. The caller claimed she sat at the table next to the three of them 6 or 7 weeks in a row, which seemed highly implausible. The idea that the three women would always get the same table and that my caller would always manage to get the table next to theirs every week didn't seem believable to me. 6. Brenda is a very observant person. She would notice if the same person kept sitting next to them and seemed to be listening to their conversations. If she thought someone was eavesdropping, Brenda would have put an end to it either by changing where they sat or going to a different restaurant for lunch. I then compiled a list of potential reasons for the call. 1. A prank by one of my friends. 2. A prank by one of Brenda's friends. 3. A malicious act by one of my enemies. 4. A malicious act by one of Brenda's enemies. 5. A malicious act by an ex-girlfriend of mine. 6. A malicious act by an ex-boyfriend of Brenda's. 7. Someone interested in Brenda, aiming to sabotage our relationship. 8. Someone interested in me, aiming to sabotage our relationship. 9. Building on points, 7 and 8. It could be someone with a crush on Brenda or me, covering all possibilities. 10. We might simply be random targets for someone's joke. 11. We could be unwitting participants in a reality TV show that plays pranks for entertainment. There were several other equally absurd possibilities on the list that I can no longer recall. The final item was, the caller was telling the truth, and Brenda is considering having an affair. For the next hour, I pondered every scenario, rearranging the list to prioritize the most probable outcomes. I dismissed the idea of a prank by either my friends or Brenda's. None of them were pranksters, and none would stoop to such cruelty. The notion of enemies playing nasty tricks didn't fit either. I didn't have anyone I considered an enemy, and I hadn't wronged anyone to provoke such behavior. I was equally certain Brenda didn't have any enemies like that either. Considering past relationships, I had 2 ex-girlfriends, but those breakups were amicable. Brenda had only one ex-boyfriend, and they parted ways over a year before we met. The possibility of a secret crush seemed unlikely to me. After meticulously reviewing the list 4 times, I concluded that the TV reality show scenario topped the list, followed by the caller speaking the truth, and Brenda possibly considering an affair. I wasn't satisfied with the outcome and doubted its accuracy. I was aware that a TV reality show scenario was implausible, yet none of the alternative explanations seemed convincing either. This led me back to the fundamental issue, whether the caller was truthful or not. If she was lying, I wondered about her motives and who else might be involved. If she was indeed telling the truth, though I still doubted it, my marriage faced significant challenges. To ascertain the truth, I needed to approach Brenda with some inquiries. I had to do so delicately to avoid arousing suspicion. If Brenda was innocent, as I believed, she'd be hurt to think I distrusted her. Conversely, if the caller spoke truthfully and Brenda grew wary of my questioning, she might suspect I knew something. In such a case, I'd never uncover the truth. It might deter Brenda from infidelity, but I'd remain ignorant of whether she'd entertained the idea. I had to gather information from Brenda gradually to prevent raising her suspicions. When I heard the garage door opening, I quickly disposed of my notes and headed to the kitchen to welcome my children and wife as they entered the house. As soon as the kitchen door swung open, Kevin rushed over, smacked my thigh, and asked, "Hi, Dad, can I go watch TV?" "Sure," I replied. "Dad, look what I made at Brownie's tonight," Michelle exclaimed, rushing over to show me the pine cones she had attached small candles to. "They are for starting fires in the fireplace. You light the candle and then the pine cone catches on fire. Isn't that a good idea?" "That's an excellent idea, sweetie. We can use these during the winter when we use the fireplace," I replied. Michelle's face lit up with happiness at my response before she darted off to join her brother in front of the television. 45 minutes later, the 4 of us sat around the dinner table, enjoying spaghetti. "How was your day?" Brenda inquired. "Pretty much the usual. My projects have been running smoothly for the past few months, so I haven't encountered any major issues," I answered. "If you ever need to start a fire, you can use one of my pine cones, Dad," Michelle giggled. "I'll keep that in mind, Shell. Next time I need to ignite one of my projects, I'll use one of your pine cones," I joked. Michelle laughed and twirled some spaghetti onto her fork. I turned to Brenda and asked, "Have you recently seen Kara?" "I had lunch with her today," she replied. "Why?" "Really? I didn't realize you were still doing that," I remarked. "We still meet for lunch every Wednesday, but why the sudden interest in whether I've seen her or not?" "It's just that you haven't brought her up in conversation for a while, and it's been nearly a year since we last socialized with Kara and John. I was thinking we should plan a dinner with them sometime soon," I explained. "Do you want to do it this weekend? I can reach out to Kara and ask," Brenda suggested. "Why don't you? It would be nice to catch up with both of them." Having confirmed that Brenda and Kara still had their weekly lunch tradition, I decided to delve a bit deeper. "So you still have lunch together every week? Where do you usually go?" "We usually go to Vinny's. It's a quaint Italian restaurant in a shopping center on Appian Way." I was familiar with the location of the shopping center, which housed a sizable supermarket, a pharmacy, several specialized boutiques, a cafe, and a Domino's pizza outlet. Since I hadn't visited that part of town in a couple of years, Vinny's was entirely new to me. "Do you always frequent the same place?" I inquired. "Yes, it offers good food at reasonable prices. Since most patrons opt for takeout during lunchtime, securing a table is easy, and the service is quick," It's also the most convenient spot for the three of us to meet, she explained. A sense of unease started to settle in my stomach. Everything I was learning seemed to align with what the caller had revealed. "Three of you? I thought it was just you and Kara," I remarked. "Kara's college roommate started joining us for lunch about a year ago," she disclosed. "Do I know her?" I questioned. "I doubt you've met Frances. She lived with Kara during college, but she had already graduated by the time you met us," she clarified. "So the three of you have lunch together every week. Perhaps I'll join you sometime," I suggested, observing Brenda's reaction closely. "That would be fantastic. We'd be delighted to have you join us," I replied. "Yeah, I suppose. The ladies are eager for you to come along for lunch. Isn't the point of our lunch gatherings to vent about our spouses anyway?" "Absolutely. But I'd complain about you to your face, so it wouldn't matter if you were there or not," Brenda chuckled. After dinner, I pitched in to help Brenda tidy up the kitchen, and then we got the kids ready for bed. It's the highlight of my day. I settle onto the couch in front of the TV, Brenda beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. This serene moment lasts only about half an hour before Brenda stretches out on the sofa, placing her head in my lap. I gently stroke her hair and caress her face until she drifts off to sleep. I always cherish these moments with her, admiring her peaceful slumber. However, that night, something felt different. Doubt had been planted in my mind, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop it from growing. Thursday proved to be challenging. Each time the phone rang, I found myself wondering if it was my anticipated caller. Yet the calls I received that day pertained solely to business matters. One of these calls came from my project manager based in Denver. We were overseeing a network migration for a major corporation headquartered there, a project that had been progressing smoothly for over a year. Tom, the project manager, reached out to inquire about my availability for a quarterly review with the client. I assured Tom that I would contact the vice president of IT and arrange a meeting in approximately 2 weeks. Having established a positive rapport with the VP, I looked forward to visiting for the review. Typically, the trip spanned 4 days. On the first day, I would travel to Denver in the morning, meet with Tom to review the project's schedule and status, and discuss any pertinent issues or topics for the upcoming meeting with the VP. The following day, I would gather insights from Tom's team. The third day would be dedicated to the meeting with the VP, usually lasting an hour, followed by some leisure time on the golf course and dinner. The fourth day was reserved for my return journey to Richmond. Later that evening, Brenda informed me that we had plans for dinner with Kara and John on Saturday, and we settled into our customary evening routine. Friday turned out to be quite stressful. I had 3 conference calls on my schedule, but the day took an unexpected turn when a problem arose with my Tulsa project. I spent most of the day solving the problem over the phone with the client, assuring him that everything would be fixed by the end of the day and the project would continue. When I returned home on Friday evening, Wednesday's event seemed like a distant memory. Brenda greeted me with a kiss at the door. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes, she informed me. "The kids are playing upstairs so we can rest a little before eating. What would you like to drink?" "A cold beer in a frosted mug is everything I dreamed of on the way home," I confessed. "Have a seat. I'll get it right away." There was nothing unusual about this. Brenda always treated me with such care. I never took it for granted, always finding ways to reciprocate her kindness. When I sat down in my favorite chair, Brenda came into the living room with our drinks. Putting them on the coffee table, she walked around behind me, ran her hands over my chest, and kissed me on the cheek. Gently biting my ear, she whispered, "I was thinking about you today." I understood Brenda's subtle hint well. Whenever she said those words, it meant that she craved intimacy. Our bed life remained vibrant even after 11 years of living together. Although I usually took the initiative, there were times when Brenda made her wishes clear. Brenda's kisses left no doubt about her intentions. The difficulty was that we waited for our children to fall asleep before getting down to business. At 8 o'clock, when we had put the children to bed, Brenda came down to me and offered to open a bottle of wine. We relaxed on the couch, enjoying each other's company until we were sure our children were asleep. Then Brenda took my hand, making it clear that it was time for us to retire to our bedroom. After a few kisses, it finally happened. It was wonderful. We didn't go to bed right away, so we decided to spend some more time with each other. While we sipped wine, Brenda stared at me with her big brown eyes. "Mike, I've been thinking about something for the last few weeks. What do you think about having another child?" she asked. "Are you serious?" "Yeah, I'm 33 and I feel it's better not to delay pregnancy," she explained. "Kevin is about to turn 7 and it seems like now is the right time if we're going to do this." "If you're sure, then I agree," I replied. "Then we agree. I'm stopping taking the pills tomorrow, and can we start trying to get pregnant?" I kissed her on the nose and suggested yes. "And maybe we should practice a little more tonight, don't you think?" "Absolutely," she agreed. I put a glass of brandy and wine next to mine on the bedside table and decided it was time for another round. Eventually, during our round, Brenda spoke up. "Is it a boy or a girl?" she asked. "I beg your pardon?" "Do you prefer a boy or a girl?" she asked. "Maybe one of them?" I suggested it. "Let's be serious. Is it a boy or a girl?" she insisted. "I really have no preferences. I just want a healthy baby," I replied. Brenda kissed me approvingly on the cheek. "That's the right answer." That night, after Brenda drifted off to sleep, I lay awake pondering the idea of us having another child. Then, my thoughts drifted back to the mysterious phone calls. If Brenda were considering an affair, she certainly wouldn't be planning to conceive. This reinforced my belief that the calls were a hoax. As I eventually dozed off, I dreamt that Brenda had indeed cheated and become pregnant. Waking from that nightmare, relief washed over me, but a shadow of doubt crept into my mind. Despite considering telling Brenda about the calls, I decided against it. I realized divulging this information might set off a chain reaction, preventing me from uncovering the truth. If Brenda knew, she'd confide in Kara, and who knows who Kara would tell. Word could easily reach the culprit, potentially thwarting any chance of resolution. Yet, there lingered the slim chance that the caller was genuine. I couldn't leave it unresolved. I had to uncover the truth. That week passed without any further calls, but it offered no relief for my growing stress about the mysterious calls. On Saturday evening, as Brenda and I prepared to join Kara and John for dinner, I hoped the outing would ease my anxiety, though I couldn't fathom how. The four of us had an enjoyable time that evening. The meal was delicious and the conversation flowed smoothly. I discreetly observed Kara and John's interaction, but noticed nothing to suggest infidelity. Despite the pleasant evening, I returned home still grappling with unanswered questions. There seemed to be no evident issues between John and Kara. Nor did Brenda and Kara harbor any secrets that I could discern. This realization should have comforted me, but instead, I felt myself sinking into a sense of despair, until Brenda whispered in my ear, "I've been thinking about you today. It's time to start a family." Following her lead to our bedroom, I wholeheartedly embraced the notion of starting a family. Afterward, Brenda gently reminded me, "It's too early for me to conceive. I only stopped taking the pill 2 days ago." "I know," I replied. "Can we try again tomorrow?" "Absolutely," Brenda assured me, sealing the promise with a kiss. On Monday morning, as I sat at my desk, an idea struck me. If the person who called me was at the same restaurant where Brenda and Kara lunched on Wednesdays, all I needed to do was visit that restaurant on a Wednesday to identify her. However, I needed to plan carefully before taking action. I vaguely mentioned the idea of joining Brenda for lunch sometime, and she seemed receptive, so my sudden appearance wouldn't alarm her. The only challenge was the risk of the caller spotting me before I could recognize her, resulting in a missed opportunity. I wasn't sure if the caller recognized me, but there was a possibility she did, making it risky to approach the restaurant directly. To scout the area, I took an extended lunch break on Monday and surveyed Vinny's from afar. I couldn't enter without being noticed, but I found a parking spot across the street behind a fence, providing partial cover while allowing me to observe the restaurant. On Monday night, I placed binoculars in my car to ensure I wouldn't forget them on Wednesday. Tuesday was filled with anticipation and stress as I waited for Wednesday to arrive. At 11 a.m. on Wednesday, I left the office and drove to the parking lot near Vinny's. Fortunately, the secluded spot behind the fence was vacant, so I parked there. After ensuring I went unnoticed, I retrieved the binoculars and focused on the restaurant. Although the glare from the sunlight made it challenging to see inside, I had no choice but to wait. I passed the time by eating the lunch I brought with me, a sandwich and soda. At 12:05 p.m., I observed Brenda, Kara, and another woman, whom I presumed to be Frances, enter Vinny's. I pulled out my binoculars and aimed them at the window, managing to barely discern the three of them taking seats at a table. Indeed, they were positioned by the window, as the informant had indicated. Although the adjacent table wasn't clearly visible, it seemed unoccupied. Over the next 45 minutes, I meticulously monitored the restaurant's entrance. While numerous patrons entered, most departed shortly after with either takeout or orders. To the best of my knowledge, no one occupied the table beside Brenda and her companions. I lingered until their departure, observing for any subsequent activity. None ensued. This left me pondering whether my informant had missed our lunch rendezvous or perhaps had spotted me and left before I could identify her. I hastened back to my office, anticipating her call. I aimed to maintain the illusion of adhering to my customary routine of dining at my desk, although there was no reason to assume she was aware of this habit. As I entered my office, the phone began to ring. "Hello, Apex Office Integrators, Mike Fulton speaking." "Mike, I'm starting to get concerned about you," the voice said. "You still haven't taken any action regarding your wife." "How do you know I haven't done anything?" "I know because of what your wife mentioned at lunch today," she replied. "You eavesdropped on their conversation again today?" "Of course. What else do I have for entertainment? You should start paying attention to me. I don't enjoy delivering this unpleasant news to you." "Then why did you call me?" "I suppose it eases my conscience about listening in on their talks. If I can assist you, maybe I'm not such a terrible person," she said. "Anyway, things are escalating." "What exactly do you mean?" "It means that today your wife confided in her friend that the next time you're away on a work trip, she plans to have a fling. Kara even suggested they double date and mentioned she knows suitable guys." The tension crept up my spine, leaving me at a loss for words or actions. The notion that my wife might contemplate infidelity was still unfathomable, yet the narrative I was hearing gained credence. Before I could dwell further, the voice on the phone interrupted. "Well, are you going to intervene or stand by? If you're not going to act, let me know so I can stop worrying about you." "I'll handle it," I replied, slamming the phone down. As I mulled over the details repeatedly, arriving home left me convinced of an issue, though uncertain if my wife was the cause. Just as I was convincing myself of her innocence, a revelation struck me like a sledgehammer. During dinner, amidst mundane conversation with the kids about school, Brenda's question sent chills down my spine. "Aren't you supposed to be in Denver soon?" The trip was indeed scheduled for the next week, but amidst my preoccupations, I had failed to inform Brenda. What unnerved me was the timing of her inquiry. My caller had alleged Brenda's intentions to have an affair the next time I traveled, and now she was asking about my upcoming trip to Denver. Coincidence? I couldn't decipher. Struggling to push it aside, Brenda's subsequent inquiry about our plans for conceiving forced me to feign illness to avoid the discussion. On Thursday morning, I made a surprising decision. I scheduled a meeting with a private investigator, something I never imagined doing. We agreed to meet on Friday morning, so I rescheduled my trip to Denver by a week, contacting my customer accordingly. It was clear I needed to resolve this situation before departing for Denver. Later that evening, I retrieved some photographs from our albums to provide to the investigator. On Friday morning at 9:30, I stepped into Ada Detective Agency. I wasn't naive enough to believe that the Tepper AA in their name reflected the quality of their services. They chose the name strategically to appear near the top of the list in the phone book, which indeed landed them in the third position. They earned my business by default since I typically avoid the first listing, and the second agency failed to answer their phone. Brian Dunstan ushered me into his office, where I spent 20 minutes outlining my requirements before handing over the photographs. "She's quite attractive," he remarked. His tone repulsed me further. I already held a dim view of him. Profiting from others' pain by spying on unfaithful partners wasn't a profession I respected. "Yes, she is," I replied curtly. "Let's review my instructions once more. Firstly, discretion is paramount. She must remain unaware of your surveillance." "No problem, Mr. Fulton," he assured me. "Discretion is our hallmark. She won't suspect a thing. If she's engaging in extramarital affairs, I need concrete evidence, photos, videos, or recordings. I'm not picky, as long as it's irrefutable." "Don't worry, Mr. Fulton. We'll gather the evidence you need if she's up to no good." "I require the evidence by next Thursday," I emphasized. "Understood. Why not come in next Thursday afternoon around 3? We'll provide you with our findings." "All right, next Thursday at 3. I'll see you then," I concluded. I left Mr. Dunstan's office feeling queasy. Over the following days, time seemed to pass slowly. I succeeded in concealing any indication of concern from Brenda. I aimed to avoid arousing any suspicions in her, and most importantly, I didn't want to disturb the children. I felt a sense of accomplishment when I could engage intimately with Brenda on 4 out of 7 nights. Wednesday afternoon found me in my office, anticipating a call. At 1:30 p.m., the phone finally rang. "Have you made any progress?" she inquired immediately upon my greeting. "I've got it under control," I assured her. "What exactly are you up to?" she pressed. "Apologies, but I can't disclose that. All I can say is it'll be concluded by the weekend," I responded. She attempted further interrogation, but I reiterated that was all I could reveal before ending the call. On Thursday at 3 o'clock, I found myself seated in Brian Dunstan's office at the Ada Detective Agency. "Mr. Fulton, I regret to inform you that we have some potentially troubling news. We apprehended her in the act, and we possess the evidence to substantiate it," he conveyed. Mr. Dunstan passed me a DVD. "All the pertinent footage is stored here, and it's all permissible in court. None of the video on this DVD was clandestinely recorded in residences or hotel rooms. We have a DVD player arranged in the adjacent room if you wish to watch the footage immediately," he offered. "I'll take the DVD with me and review it privately if you don't mind. Kindly provide me with the invoice and I'll settle it before I leave," I replied. Back in my office, I locked the door and inserted the DVD into my laptop by pressing the play button. Dunstan's statement was accurate. Incriminating evidence unfolded in front of me. The first scene was shot on Monday at 9 p.m. and depicted her sitting in a bar booth with a man. His arm wrapped around her neck, and they exchanged kisses before stepping onto the dance floor. The recording began at 10:15 p.m. It showed her getting into a car with the same person. Once inside, they did it in the car. At 11:05 a.m., they were seen entering a room at the downtown Ramada Inn. After leaving at 1:25 a.m., they returned to the bar from where she left in her car, heading home. The subsequent episode took place on Wednesday morning at 9:07 a.m. She was sitting in a diner having breakfast, accompanied by another man. He was touching her insistently. In the next scene, a detective inspects a car believed to belong to a man. At first, it seemed that he was not in the car as her head was hidden by the seat. But when the car turned into the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse, her head appeared. In the subsequent scene, the car was at such a distance from the camera that it was impossible to see its passengers. The camera then zoomed in until the man who was intimate with the woman became visible. That was my limit. I saved the video to my hard drive, transferred it to a blank DVD, and then deleted the file. After placing the DVD in a protective case, I put it in a large envelope made of thick paper. The original DVD was put away in a safe in my office, and I set about my dubious task. That night, I arrived home about 20 minutes before Brenda did. When the door from the garage to the kitchen opened, Kevin and Michelle rushed into the house without greeting me. Brenda followed behind them, smiling. "You're home early tonight," she remarked. "Just gearing up to make a baby tonight," I replied. Brenda chuckled. "Good, because I've been thinking about you all day," she said. "Did you check the mail?" "No, I forgot. I'll go get it now." "Sit down. I'll fetch it," she insisted. "Wouldn't want your little soldiers to be too worn out for their task tonight." Returning with the usual stack of junk mail and a large manila envelope, Brenda sifted through it quickly, dropping everything but the envelope onto the coffee table. Handing me the large envelope, she said, "Addressed to you with no return address." I didn't respond, simply taking the envelope and placing it beside me on the table. "How about a beer?" I offered. "I'd love one." I got up, fetched 2 beers from the kitchen, and returned. After handing one to Brenda, I settled back onto the sofa. We chatted about work briefly before Brenda asked, "Aren't you curious about what's inside that envelope?" "It's probably just junk mail," I dismissed. "I know, but why not open it anyway?" she suggested. I picked up the envelope and began to open the flap when the phone rang. Brenda quickly got up to answer it, and as I watched her, I caught the first part of her conversation. "Hello?" A standard greeting. "Oh, hi. What? Seriously? Hold on." At that point, Brenda moved into the kitchen, and I couldn't hear the rest of her conversation. The call lasted no more than 10 minutes, and once it ended, Brenda returned to the living room, announcing she needed to go see Kara immediately, citing an emergency. "What kind of emergency?" I inquired. "I'm not sure." Kara was too distraught to explain properly over the phone. "Can you take care of feeding the kids and putting them to bed?" "Of course. I've done it before, you know." "I know. I'm sorry. I'm just really worried and upset." Brenda grabbed her purse and keys and hurried out the door. "I'll be back as soon as I can," she assured me. "Don't worry about me. Just take care of Kara," I reassured her. After Brenda departed, I entered the family room where Kevin and Michelle were engrossed in watching television. "Mom had to step out for a bit, so it's up to me to feed you. You've got 2 options. Either I can whip up some liver and onions, or we can head to McDonald's. It's your call," I informed them. Kevin immediately began clamoring, "McDonald's, McDonald's, McDonald's." Michelle, ever the joker, quipped, That's a tough decision. You know how much I adore liver, but I'm guessing you'd rather not slave over the stove, so I'll opt for McDonald's just to make things easier for you." I scooped Michelle up, playfully spun her around, then set her down and tickled her. "You're such a silly one," I chuckled. Not wanting to be left out, Kevin tugged at my arm. "My turn. I want to fly like Michelle did." I gave Kevin a ride and indulged him with some tickling as well. The 3 of us dashed off to McDonald's and returned home within the hour. I then instructed them to head upstairs to get ready for bed. By 8 o'clock, they were snug in their beds, with Kevin already dozing off, while I sat on the edge of Michelle's bed, listening intently as she recounted something that had happened at school that day. After she finished narrating, I gently kissed her forehead and turned off her lamp. Descending the stairs, I fetched a beer from the fridge. Settling onto the sofa, I took a long sip before reaching for the sizable envelope. Pouring its contents onto the coffee table revealed 2 copies of my Denver trip itinerary, along with airline tickets, hotel and rental car reservations. I pinned one copy of the itinerary to the refrigerator using a banana-shaped magnet and stashed the remaining papers in my briefcase. Picking up my Sports Illustrated, I began to read. Brenda arrived home close to midnight, visibly stressed about Kara's situation. "What's going on?" I inquired. "What happened with Kara?" "Let me grab a beer, and then I'll fill you in," she replied. "Want one?" "Sure." Returning with the drinks, Brenda settled next to me on the sofa. "All right, let's try this again." "What's Kara's emergency?" I prompted. Brenda took a deep breath before speaking. "John kicked her out tonight." "What? John did what?" "When Kara got back from work around 6:30, John was there waiting. He'd packed her bags and tossed them out, telling her to leave." "Good Lord, unbelievable. Is there someone else involved? Is that why he kicked her out?" I speculated. "No, not at all. You know John. He wouldn't do that." I fell silent for a moment before blurting out, "It's Kara, isn't it? She's been seeing someone else." "Is that what this is about?" Brenda glanced down, confirming. "Yes. John discovered she was cheating." "Jesus, what's wrong with her? She had a wonderful husband. I thought she loved him." "She does love him," Brenda affirmed. "If she loved him, how could she betray him?" "I don't know. I can't explain her actions," Brenda admitted. "I feel sorry for her." "You feel sorry for her? What about John? She cheated on him." "I know, but he didn't have to kick her out like that." "He also hit her," Brenda revealed. "I wasn't happy about it." "Really?" "He insulted her and hit her." "That's it?" I inquired. "What do you mean, that's it?" "He hit her. He shouldn't have done that," she insisted. "Are you siding with her? She betrayed him. You know how much he loved her. That must have hurt him deeply." "If it were me, I might have reacted the same way, or even worse. I love you more than anything, but if you ever hurt me like that, I don't know if I could handle it any better than John did." "I'm not siding with her. I just think John should have given her a chance to explain." "What's there to explain?" "You think John should have given her time to fabricate excuses for why she cheated," I countered. "Why are you so upset about this?" Brenda questioned. "I'm upset because I can empathize with John's pain. I bet if he had been the one who cheated, you wouldn't be as understanding." Brenda hesitated before responding. "You're Kara's closest friend. You have lunch with her every week. Did you have any clue that she was cheating on John?" "What? Why are you asking me that? What are you implying?" Brenda stammered. "Brenda, you've always been truthful with me. Please don't start deceiving me now. Were you aware that Kara was involved with other men?" Brenda avoided eye contact and quietly admitted, "Yes." "For how long?" "Several months." "Did you attempt to intervene?" "How?" "Did you make any effort?" I pressed. "No." "Then you indirectly condoned her actions. By not intervening, you essentially gave her permission," I remarked. "No. No. I didn't endorse it. I disapproved of what she was doing. I just didn't know how to address it, so I said nothing." "That still makes you partially responsible for what occurred tonight," I asserted, surprised by the intensity of my anger towards Brenda. "How can you blame me?" "I didn't tell her to cheat on John." "But you never made any effort to prevent her from cheating. And now that she's been caught, you're siding with her. I feel like I don't even know you anymore. Weren't you the one always emphasizing the importance of fidelity in marriage? Does that only apply to husbands, or does it not apply to close friends like Kara? Kara made a mistake. She's my friend, and I have to support her. She's in a lot of pain." "What about John? Don't you think he's suffering? What Kara did doesn't just impact her and John. Look at what it's doing to us right now," I said, rising from the sofa. "I'm going to bed." Brenda remained silent. I remained awake in bed for some time, pondering the recent argument with Brenda. I felt frustration towards her for failing to recognize the harm caused by Kara, and equally frustrated with myself for allowing anger to consume me. Nonetheless, I hoped the confrontation would prompt Brenda to reflect. Any thoughts she entertained about pursuing an affair to add excitement to her life would likely dissipate. 30 minutes later, when Brenda joined me in bed, I feigned sleep to avoid conversation. Over the following days, there was a slight chill in the air around our place. Come Monday morning, I boarded my flight bound for Denver. I made a conscious decision not to ring Brenda on Monday, so naturally she ended up calling me at 9 o'clock, which was 11 o'clock, her time, in Richmond. "Why didn't you give me a call when you landed?" she inquired. "I figured you might not want to chat," I replied. There was a brief silence before Brenda retorted, "Regardless of what you thought, you should have called." Fair point. I apologize for not calling. It won't happen again. Our conversation lasted only about 5 minutes. Brenda mentioned she needed to ensure I arrived safely in Denver before she could rest. Then she reminded me to make sure I phoned early enough to speak with the kids the next day. In the subsequent days, Brenda seemed more amiable during our conversations. Both of us avoided discussing Kara and John. As for my return flight on Thursday, it was scheduled to arrive a little after 7 in the evening. Before departing Denver, I phoned Brenda to inform her of my expected arrival time. "Will you be able to grab something to eat on your way back?" she asked. "I'm taking the kids to dinner at my parents', and you won't make it in time for the meal." "No problem. I'll see you when I get home." My flight landed on schedule, so I decided to drop by a cozy bar and grill known for its delicious burgers. Upon entering, I spotted John sitting at the bar, grabbing a drink. Curious, I approached him to catch up. As I reached him, he was already settling into a booth, accompanied by a woman I hadn't met before. "Hey, John. How's it going?" "Mike, good to see you. I'm hanging in there, considering the circumstances," he replied. "Mike, meet my friend Fanny." "Fanny, Mike." "Pleasure to meet you, Fanny," I greeted. "Without Fanny, I might have completely lost it," John confessed. "In that case, I'm really glad to meet you," I said to Fanny. "Mike, we're just grabbing a drink before heading out for dinner." "Why don't you grab a drink and join us?" John suggested. I ordered a beer and pulled up a chair beside the booth. We avoided discussing Kara or her actions. Instead, John mainly talked about Fanny, reminiscing about their college days. Eventually, he inquired about Brenda and the kids. After roughly 20 minutes, John excused himself to use the restroom. As he left the table, Fanny smiled at me. "Fanny? I assume that's a nickname. I'm guessing your name is Francis, am I right?" "You're correct." "I have to say, you did a good job," Fanny replied. "That's what I do. I solve problems," I said. "So how long have you harbored feelings for John?" "Since our college days." "You were Kara's roommate back then, weren't you?" "Yes." "You're quite astute." "So you manipulated me to get rid of Kara," I remarked. "Yes. I'm sorry, but I couldn't confront her myself. I didn't want her to know I betrayed her, and I didn't want to be the one to tell John his wife was cheating on him." "Do you feel any remorse for what you've done?" "I don't feel guilty. Look, if Kara hadn't started cheating on John, I would have stayed in the background forever. I wouldn't have wanted to hurt either of them. But when she started boasting about it, I had to intervene. And why shouldn't I benefit from it?" "But why involve Brenda and me in this?" "There was no one else. I apologize for dragging you into it, but I couldn't let her continue hurting him," Fanny explained. "How did you know I would inform John about Kara's infidelity?" I inquired. "I've been having lunch with your wife every week for over a year. She talks about you all the time. She painted a clear picture of someone with high moral standards. From her description, I could tell you would put an end to Kara's cheating one way or another, and I was confident John would eventually discover the truth. It was truly clever to carry it out anonymously. John suspects that one of Kara's boyfriend's wives hired a detective to tail him and then forwarded the pictures to John. I suppose I have one more bone to pick with you, I said. You lied about Brenda entertaining the idea of an affair, didn't you? Yes. I had to fabricate that to get you involved. The truth is, Brenda was deeply upset with Kara over this, but she never confronted her about it. Brenda and I discussed it a few times. Brenda kept hoping that Kara would come to her senses and cease her indiscretions. I never disclosed this to Brenda, but I was secretly hoping John would catch her. So Kara never attempted to persuade Brenda into infidelity? I asked. Well, Kara did bring it up once, and Brenda made it abundantly clear she would never entertain such a notion. That's where I got the idea to reach out to you. I twisted the details a bit, but it stemmed from Kara's suggestion, Fanny admitted. I was torn between despising Fanny and admiring her audacity. She found a way to alert John to Kara's infidelity, and then provided him with support to alleviate his pain. Before I could say anything further to Fanny, I noticed John returning from the restroom. We finished our drinks, and just before they left, John turned to me and said, I don't know what the future holds, but I hope you and Brenda will still regard me as a friend. I'm sure we will, John. It was a pleasure meeting you, Mike, Fanny said, a sly smile briefly crossing her face. Likewise, I replied. After their departure, I placed an order for a cheeseburger with fries and another beer. While indulging in my meal, a peculiar sensation washed over me. It felt like euphoria, and it took me a moment to discern its source. The accumulated stress of recent weeks had dissipated. Despite my assurances to myself that I never doubted Brenda's fidelity, a lingering worry gnawed at me. Hearing from Fanny that Brenda had consistently shown no inclination towards infidelity and had expressly stated her commitment to fidelity didn't immediately register. It all clicked suddenly. That cheeseburger became the most exquisite I had ever tasted. Upon finishing my meal, I phoned Brenda to inform her of my imminent return. She mentioned she was preparing to leave her parents' house and would be home in approximately half an hour. Suddenly, half an hour felt like an eternity. I got home 15 minutes before Brenda did. I was exhilarated from my conversation with Fanny, so much so that I couldn't stay seated. My mind was racing with emotions. I knew I needed to apologize to Brenda for my behavior the night John threw Kara out of the house. I wanted to embrace Brenda tightly, confess my love to her, make love to her. I even had the impulse to take her as soon as she walked through the door and make love to her on the kitchen floor. But I knew I couldn't. None of those things were possible until the kids were asleep. Then it hit me that Brenda might still be angry with me for leaving for Denver. This homecoming might not go as planned. I might spend the evening trying to earn Brenda's forgiveness for being so tough on her about not intervening with Kara and her marriage. I reflected on how some of my married colleagues boasted about their affairs during business trips. I didn't condone their actions, but I never spoke up. In a way, I was enabling them, just like Brenda had enabled Kara. I was hard on Brenda because I wanted to warn her that if she ever cheated, she could expect the same fate as Kara. Learning later that Brenda had never even considered cheating made my behavior unjustifiable. I could never tell Brenda the real reason behind my actions, so I could only hope she would accept my apology and forgive me. I faced another dilemma in handling my situation. Instead of directly confronting Kara, I took the drastic step of hiring a detective to gather evidence of her infidelity, and then had it delivered to John's residence. I sacrificed their marriage to salvage my own. While John discovered the truth about Kara and she faced consequences, I can't help but question the morality of my actions. Perhaps I should have confronted Kara directly. Suddenly, my internal thoughts spilled out aloud. I made a selfish decision to protect my marriage, and I'd do it again. I sympathize with John, but Kara's betrayal isn't my responsibility, and there's no assurance she would have stopped. Seated on the living room sofa, I pondered whether to stay put or rush to the kitchen to greet Brenda and the kids as they returned home. Opting to wait, I anticipated the usual clamor upon their arrival. Yet when the kitchen door swung open, the anticipated noise failed to materialize. Michelle and Kevin were never quiet upon entering. Waiting another moment, I expected them to burst into the living room. But they didn't. As I turned towards the kitchen, I found Brenda standing in the doorway. "Where are the kids?" I inquired. "They're staying the night at my parents'. The school has a teacher-in-service day tomorrow, so the kids don't have school," Brenda explained. Brenda was dressed in a white skirt, paired with a red blouse. I've always liked Brenda in red. "You look lovely," I complimented. "Thank you. I know you like this red blouse on me, that's why I chose it," she replied. Suddenly, a sense of reassurance washed over me. Brenda approached and stood in front of me. "I need to tell you something," she began. "Please don't interrupt me. I've been reflecting a lot on what you said last week, and I now understand your perspective. I should have intervened with Krawa. Deep down, I think I knew her reckless behavior would lead to this. I feel immense guilt about it. I'm sorry for arguing with you. Brenda, there's no need to apologize. I overreacted too. Kara was your closest friend, and you were caught in a difficult situation. Looking back, I'm not sure if I would have handled things differently if our positions were reversed. This situation was emotionally charged because John and Kara were both our friends. My anger and frustration were triggered by Kara's actions against John, but unfairly directed towards you. Similarly, I think you channeled your frustration towards me. What happened to John and Kara is tragic, but we can't let it consume us. I extended my hand to Brenda, and she came over, sitting on my lap, wrapping her arms around my neck. I adore you so much. I tried to get mad at you, but when you didn't call me on Monday, it almost broke my heart, Brenda confessed. I pulled Brenda to me and kissed her. Moreover, we have our own problems that need to be solved, I said. Brenda pulled back slightly and looked into my eyes. What kind of problems are these? What is it? She asked. How can you get pregnant if we don't make love? Brenda's expression softened and she smiled radiantly. Well, then you better start making love to me, she teased. You're very confident in yourself, aren't you? I noticed it when I touched her stockings. You dressed like this, hoping that I wouldn't be able to resist your charm. It worked, didn't it? Damn it, it always happens. You know I can't resist you. After that, we started climbing the stairs to get to the bedroom, but stopped halfway and did it right on the stairs, and then went to bed. Brenda sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the morning paper while sipping on a cup of coffee. Why's there a damp spot on the stairs? I inquired. I spilled a bit last night. I tried to clean it up, but it had already dried. I think it left a slight discoloration on the wood, she explained. Oh, and by the way, you were amazing last night. Thanks. You were too. You know, last night might have been the night, Brenda hinted. What do you mean? Last night was the middle of my cycle. I would have been fertile, she revealed. We'll have to try again tonight just to be sure, I suggested. However, that night and the following nights didn't go as planned. Between kids, work, and visits from our parents, we couldn't find the time. But a few weeks later, we discovered Brenda was pregnant. The night Brenda broke the news to me as we headed upstairs to bed, I noticed the faint stain on the stairs and couldn't help but laugh. I asked Brenda if she'd ever tell our child that they were conceived on those stairs. Not until we're ancient, she replied with a smile. By the way, you were on my mind today.